Welcome back to Grit Gym, guys. 12:30, we come to you to talk about your health, your exercise. So health is exercise, mindset, nutrition, recovery. If we put all four of these together, we got a very healthy individual, right? We get the right kind of mindset. We get responsibility at an all-time high. We get them asking themselves questions to set an intention for the day. We get them believing in themselves. We get them thinking more along the lines of positivity or a solution-based mindset. And good things happen, right? We get your nutrition on point. Good things happen, right? That doesn't need to be sold anymore. Everybody understands. You eat your vegetables, good things happen. You eat good quality meats, good things happen. You eat your fruits, good things happen, right? You eat sugar all day long, probably not a really great, good things are going to happen. Now, that's not me hating on sugar, because sugar is perfectly fine. It's when you have mountains of sugar going into your body that it becomes not such a great thing. And then you also have the recovery standpoint too, and the exercise standpoint too. That kind of came out funny. But you have the exercise standpoint. I don't think the exercise needs to be sold anymore. I think exercise is sold. Now you just got to go ahead and execute it. You believe in exercise. Now you got to go ahead and do it. And what we're talking about today is a lot of belief structure type stuff. So we're going to get into some heavy mindset things. And what I intend to do by the end of this talk, I intend to convince you, or to challenge, I guess. I should say challenge instead of convince, another C word. There's a joke there somewhere around C words that I definitely don't need to make. But instead of convince, my intention is to challenge your perspective upon ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, addiction, depression, and anxiety. Have you noticed, when I was writing out my notes for this, they either started with a D or they started with an A. I thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, I want to challenge your perspective on these throughout this talk. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to have 7 different big bullet points that I'm going to do my best to give you my perspective on, because my perspective is quite a bit different than the rest of the world, partially because I've experienced all of these on a clinical, massive, terrible, not so great experience, really pretty awful experience at multiple points in my life. And we'll get into that here in a second. But my intention is to challenge your perspectives on these. Okay, so the thing is, around this topic, mental health is a thing. We need to look at this. I really think that in today's world, we are in a new kind of level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So you got your shelter, and you got your food, and you got your survivability, and that our basic level needs have kind of been taken care of. Our basic level needs are, we survive extremely well. We're in a civilized society that is set up so there's no bear that's going to come in into my house right now and take me on, or into the gym and eat me, right? So our survivability is at an extremely all-time high, and now we're up into kind of a more spiritual level or an emotional level. And I don't know if we really know what to do in this. Okay, so look at the news. I mean, you're seeing it all the time. I don't know if we go back 40 years, if the news just didn't report a lot of the bad stuff, or now they're just reporting more and more of the stuff that we didn't know that they didn't report back when, because it was so awful. But either way, if you're striving for significance and you need instant significance so much, I mean, you put a gun in somebody's face and you're pretty important all of a sudden, that's a really terrible way to feel special. And I think a lot of us are in this new emotional level, don't know how to deal with it, and nobody is really giving a map to how to get there. And that's why, that's a lot of the reason that we're doing this stuff, because I've had so much trouble. All of these videos, you guys think these videos are for you, and they are, but every one of these videos is based off of some kind of hardship, some kind of thing that I've had to deal with in my own life that I went and sought coaching over, or I went and sought answers, and I'm so curious, and I'm so relentless, and I'm so ridiculous on all these subjects that I found really good answers, and so I'm trying to provide them back to you so that maybe you can have, maybe you can use them in your own life. So depression, anxiety, ADHD, dyslexia, addiction, these are things that that society almost thinks like you're a victim of these things, that you can't change them, that's just the way you are. It's the makeup of your brain, that you are at the whim of your addiction. You're at the whim of your depression. There's nothing else that you can do about it. And even recently, a video has gone viral in the last few months around how we look at mental illness versus how we look at physical ailments and injuries, and if we treated them both the same. Now, the thing about that is that if you cut your arm and you looked at it how we look at depression, if you switch this around, instead of doing how the video does it is, they get a cut on their arm, and some people are like, well, somebody's got it worse than you. Well, if we treated ailments like injuries and cuts and bruises like we do depression or anxiety or addiction or ADD or anything like this, we just sit there and look at it. And we wouldn't do anything about it. So the thing is, like, you've got to do something about that. Like, you've got depression, you've got anxiety, you've got these things, and you've practiced them and gotten really good at them. Well, then we got to do something about it. So in practice, these things, what I'm trying to get across there is, in practice, these things become, they become as real and as powerful as you believe them to be. The more that you believe in depression, anxiety, ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, the more that you believe in these things and the more power that you give to these things, the more they're going to be a part of your life. Okay, so what you focus on grows. I'm kind of skipping around on this a little bit, but whatever you practice, you get better at, even if you get better at the thing that you didn't want to get better at. If you can get better at doing something poor, you're always going to get a result. You're always going to get a result. When people come to the gym and they're like, well, we really want to get results. Well, you've gotten a result from sitting on the couch for the last 6 years. Now let's get a different result. You're always going to get a result. So in practice, if you practice these things, if you practice depression, you're going to get better at being depressed. If you practice anxiety, if you get anxious a lot, you're practicing being anxious. If you dig into the ADD, ADHD, and you're just like, well, I'm stupid, I can't read, it's so hard to do this. Well, that's what you did. You just practiced being a victim of your own scenario. Okay, number one, I'm going to talk about drugs here a little bit. Before I do that, to go off of your medication, if you are a person watching this, to go off of your medication could possibly be a very serious public health concern. So for everything that I say right here, realize to go off your medication could be a very public health concern. If you think of, like a lot of people say they have trust issues, I don't believe that they have trust issues because we drive 60 miles an hour on a 2-lane road where we're meeting cars head by head, and all we have is this basically imaginary yellow painted line right down the middle separating us. That's trust. You don't have a trust issue with any of this stuff. Where was I going with that? But if you have these tendencies to think, oh, I'll just pull my car into oncoming traffic, then you probably need to stay on your medication until you can build up a different sort of mindset around that. Now, you have an obstacle in front of you, and I told you, like, with that said, you do have an obstacle in front of you, and drugs maybe aren't the thing that is going to get you where to go, because drugs are avoiding the cause. Are avoiding the source, or avoiding the responsibility of the scenario. So if you can attack, you can confront, you can meet that beast without the drugs, and you can face that thing down, and you can make it succumb to your will, well then you've just won. Okay? And I'm going to talk more about this in a second, but so first of all, the big thing is it's a public health concern to go off your meds for a lot of people. Now, when you're talking about ADD and dyslexia and attention deficit ADHD, I've heard before that teachers will equate it to not giving your kids glasses if they have an eye problem. Now, this is absurd. That little kid that is having trouble sitting in the chair and listening to, one, either stop putting boring crap on the board and start teaching in a way that they can jive with, or realize that he is pulling off a tremendous amount of discipline and learning very good lessons by disciplining himself to staying in that seat and trying to learn. Even if he doesn't pick up anything that teacher says, he's probably going to learn more from the act of disciplining himself to try than he's actually going to get from that lesson the teacher is teaching, if that made any sense at all. So there is value just in letting that kid sit there and struggle. There is massive, massive value in struggle. I cannot get that across enough. You want a child to struggle. You want to overcome. You want to let them have a challenge. This idea that Like, it's almost like the participation trophy thing. It's ridiculous. You want the challenge, like to give a trophy before you actually had the season, to give it, like, bring a state championship trophy, set it down and be like, you guys are all winners. And then, like, the trophy doesn't mean anything to if they didn't have to earn it throughout the season. Nobody's proud of the trophy. I have tons of trophies. I don't care about any of them. What I remember, what I'm proud of, and I think you talk to most athletes will be proud of the struggle. They'll be proud of what they did. They'll be proud of the courage that it took to walk out or to run out on the field and do their thing right and win the day. That's what they're going to be proud of. They're not going to be proud of the trophy. They're going to be proud of the struggle, the challenge, the obstacle, and overcoming it. So back on task, right? So number 2 is all of these categories: ADHD, dyslexia, attention deficit, or I just said attention, ADHD, ADD, dyslexia, anxiety, depression. They're all, and this is going to stick with me for a second because this can sound a little funky. They're all invented. These are all invented. Okay, words are containers, and you will fill them however you see fit. So how you fill the word depression might be different than the way I fill the word depression. And we do the same thing with love. We do the same thing with hate. We do the same thing with any word. You know, you could call a book a banana and say that you open a peel instead of a page, and it would be the same thing. It would just be a flip of the word. So words are just containers. How do you fill these words? And these are all invented. All these categories are invented by words. Or all these are invented categories to put you in to make sense of where you belong. And I don't know if you belong in any of these. Personally, I do not believe that any of these are actually real outside of the category that was invented by man, by people. You know, like, even if you look at science textbooks, the Quran, the Bible, like, they're all invented ideas. They're ideas, and they're all based on ideas that were invented by somebody somewhere. Now, some of these might be tested ideas, but there's still going to be different perspectives and wiggle room within each that we have to go and then test again. So I'm personally extremely skeptic of all this stuff. Even in the concussion thing right now, I was having a discussion with someone about this the other day about, like, I said, well, if it turns out to be a real thing, and they're like, but it is a real thing. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if, for one, we're going off of like MRI scans and those things do not tell the symptom. Like an X-ray doesn't show the symptom; it just shows the physical structure of. Now, so I don't know if slamming your head into another person it causes damage over time. I'm pretty sure that it probably does, but I don't know how much. And I'm just a healthy skeptic. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm not being a pessimist. I'm just saying I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We're going to see. We're going to keep doing research, and we're going to see. And we're going to keep doing research on happiness. We're going to keep doing research on depression. We're going to keep doing research on these drugs, which I think is silly. I think we need to look a little bit further. What is the source? What is the source? So if these are scientifically proven, if it is scientifically proven, this is number 3. If it is scientifically proven that you're depressed and you're going to stay depressed, you have an anxiety problem, you have an ADHD problem, you have an ADD problem, if you have a dyslexia problem, if you have an addiction problem, then how do you explain me? This is the big one. This is the one that I just can't get over when I'm talking to people. It's like, then how do you explain me? Anxiety out the ass. Massive depression to the point that, I mean, like, crazy suicidal thoughts that nobody ever knew about. Not diagnosed addiction, however, like, I'm positive. Diagnosed ADD, diagnosed dyslexia. How in the world are you going to explain someone like me? And you can be like, but Adam, you have a purpose, you have a passion, this isn't a passion, this is work. Okay, this is me disciplining myself and pushing out into the world and trying to help other people out, I'm trying to help my business, but I'm trying to help my business by way of doing something that I like to do, that I love to do, that I want to do to help billions of people in a positive way. It's my ethical duty to push out into this. However, that's also a little bit of a paradox because it works both ways. Okay, there's an exchange there that is really great. Okay, if you are like, but Adam, you have this. Well, you do too. You have something that you can be passionate about. Like me living with, like putting my purpose out there, one, helps me, also helps somebody else, also circumvents the whole helping people thing. Weird, crazy. So how do you explain someone like me? And if you aren't a victim of these things, if you are a victim of these things, think about that for a second. So the victimization thing, because really, when you really stop and look at it, it's easy to say, oh, you're a victim of depression, you're a victim of anxiety, you're a victim of ADD. Oh, this is so sad, and it is. No doubt it's sad. However, take another step from a super objective standpoint. Get outside and just take your heart right out of your chest. Or stick your heart back in your chest because you have enough heart to look at this objectively. Care enough to look at this objectively for 2 seconds here. Are you, if you are a victim of these things, then are you also the perpetrator of your life and you're just using the depression and the anxiety and the diagnoses, the addiction as the weapon against you? Because I think that's what's really going on. You're practicing being depressed. You're not really depressed. You're playing the victim role and getting good at it. Okay? And that sounds super harsh, okay? But that's a gift. You have a gift. You have an obstacle. You have a challenge. You have something to overcome. When you do get over that, think of how good that's going to feel and how much courage that's going to give you to continue to push further and to live a better life. A more incredible life. It's not necessarily harsh. It's caring enough to put a perspective in your mind. Okay, if you put that perspective, put the perspective in your mind, not the not the I can't, not the I'm scared. Put the perspective in your mind that you can, that you will, that you're going to push. And if you're not willing to do any of these things, if you're not willing to go this mile, if you're not willing to go there with yourself or with me or with anybody else, ask yourself, or if you say, well, I tried that and it didn't work. This is my favorite one. If I tried that and it didn't work, well, then how did it feel to quit? I know what it feels like to quit. I know what quitting feels like. Now think of this. What would it feel like to do the other? I'd much rather go with the one that I didn't know what it felt like than the one that I did that felt like garbage. Okay. So number 4, is some of the explanations that have gone out there about why are we more depressed as a species? Species maybe isn't the right word, but why as time goes along do people show further and further signs of depression? Is it social media? Is it one of the explanations is that our brains are growing. Okay, and this is absolutely false. Scientifically, this is false. This is tested. This is known. This is an anthropological fact. Might have just made up a word there, but I don't think so. It just came out funny. But this is accurate. When civilizations formed, our brains actually shrunk. As technology has improved, our brains continue to shrink. You outsource, where's my phone? You outsource to your phone, think of how many numbers you could hold in your head 20 years ago before you had this phone around you all the time. You could hold your grandparents' number, your mom and dad's number, your siblings' number, most of your friends' numbers were just up there and you just dial them out. You even could do it on a rotary dial that took like 20 seconds to put all those stupid numbers in. Do you remember those? So our brains are actually shrinking over time as we outsource and as we become more specialized, which is kind of interesting. So it's not that our brains are changing size. That can't be the catalyst. Okay, and then the other thing is it's the chemicals, right? They are responsible. The thing about the chemicals is that yes, involuntary response, right? Like your heartbeat. Your heart's going to beat. You don't have to think about your heart beating for it to beat. However, you can consciously slow your heart rate down. You can do the same thing with the stress hormones that are in your body. So the stress hormones that are going around your body, your cortisol, your adrenaline, like all these things that spike when we have this, these negative kind of feelings, or what we associate with negative feelings that end up drowning us out, making us very sick, making us literally ill, and then adding into all those circumventing the whole scenario with the depression and anxiety in our brains. You can have effect over that. That's part of the reason meditation works. And remember that whatever you focus on, you get better at. Whatever you practice, you get better at. So if you practice more anxiety, you get better at being anxious, which is it isn't necessarily probably the way that you want to live, I don't think. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. I don't know. But if we practice calming ourselves down, we're going to get better at being a more calm individual. If we practice being high energy, we're going to be better at being high energy. If we get better at whatever it is we're trying to do, if we force ourselves out into the world, we're going to get better at forcing ourselves out into the world. When I look back, my best video, like talk about practicing and getting better at something, watch one of my first videos on here, and it's like no smiles, this the whole time. It's a really bad video, okay? Are these better videos now? I hope so. I hope so. But if it's not going well, what do you have to do? If you're not good, what do you have to do? If you're not great, what do you have to do? If you're not where you want to be, what do you have to do? You got to improve. So that's one of the lines I've used on myself for a long time. It's like, well, I sucked at that. That was so terrible. And I was sitting there and just feeding myself all this bullshit. That was terrible. That sucked. I can't believe that went so bad. Change that around. What do you have to do? Because none of those are serving you. They're not serving me. They're not serving anybody in my atmosphere anyway. What do you have to do? You have to improve. You don't have to be great. You just have to improve. You don't have to be even good. You just have to improve. You just got to keep improving. How do we make this better? How do we make this better? How do we make this better is what is always going around in my brain. Okay. Number 6, addiction. How do you explain me? Again, how do you explain me? Depression, anxiety, addiction, ADD and ADHD. How do you explain someone that has risen out of these things that doesn't, not that I don't have these characteristics, but that and not that I've cured them, but that I don't let them rule my life. Look at these books. I'm an extremely slow reader if you were to test me out. That is okay. I think it's a gift. It makes me slow down and really absorb what I'm reading. Most people are just kind of glossing over and they read so fast that I think that they don't really, I get the A to Z full comprehension, and then when I go back through, so I just absorb more. I'm more curious. There's things about me that's in that ADD HD category that is invented by people that I don't think is even a real thing. It's just a personality trait. Is a very, very good thing. It's not worth self-victimizing over. And the last one here, you get what you focus on. This is the harshest thing in here, by the way. This is the harshest statement that I can possibly make. You get what you focus on. If you want to be more, if you don't want to be depressed anymore, if you don't want to be addicted to something anymore, if you don't want to, well, stop focusing on the booze and start focusing on you. Put all your energy and your attention and your focus on making you the best you that you can possibly be. You're going to have to challenge some stuff. Because I guarantee you, the thing about that addiction, you might use booze, you might use sex, you might use, drugs, but it still ends and began with you. So you got to focus on you. Okay? Same thing with depression. It's like you might call it this thing out here, this tangible thing, but it's still going to begin and end with you. It's not real. It's this thing that you're creating in your head. And yes, we all think a little bit different and all this stuff, but if you have the courage to push forward and to improve and to focus on making you the best you that you can be, I think that, I'm not saying you're not going to have an obstacle for the rest of your life. I'm saying that you can improve. Whatever you focus on grows. And I've tried, well, then if you've tried, then you know how, then really what you're saying is, I tried and I quit. You just didn't finish the sentence. What's it feel like to not quit? What's it feel like to keep going? What's it feel like to conquer? What's it feel like to win the challenge, to overcome, to get better? You know? And if you're looking at me and you're like, well, he has this and he has that, and I designed this, I architected this, I built this. Okay? I architected my entire life so that I can get my head in the right space so that I can live the life that I want to live. I can have the time that I want to have with the people that I want to spend with. And you can too. That's the crazy thing, is that I think that a lot of people will shy away from this and be like, well, I can't do that because XYZ. I've had I don't know how many coaches along the way teaching me stuff about mindset. And I don't mean just like mentors. I mean people that I paid to help me map my brain. I've had coaches teach me about nutrition, literally like taking courses on nutrition to help my nutrition, and then also courses to help other people with their nutrition, because those are two separate things. Same thing with exercise, same thing with recovery. And I did the same thing, reading books, watching videos, buying info products. If you do not design your life will just end up kind of happening. And you just kind of go with the flow of whatever ends up happening, instead of living the one that you wanted to live, how you wanted to live it, in the way that you wanted it to go, right? So there's 7 different things here. There's 7 different things, and I hope that they challenge a little bit of your perspective, or the world's perspective, or the perspective that you can take out into the world on depression, anxiety, ADD, dyslexia, addiction, because I don't think they're real. I think I either think we're creating them and we're using them as weapons to be a perpetrator against our own lives. So we are the perpetrator of our own victimization, and we're using all of these things as weapons against ourselves, which is silly. If you think about it, that's really silly. Why would you want to do that to yourself? And if you are, then you got to break that cycle, and that's going to be tough, okay? Because that's going to be sneaky. It's going to be hard. And you probably want to employ some friends. You probably want to get a coach. You probably want to have somebody else challenging you along the way to do that. But remember, all of this, like, this sounded very anti-drug. I don't think I'm actually I'm not an anti-drug person. I don't do drugs. I don't really have a ton of interest in it. But I do think if you want to go try drugs for the experience, like DMT or ayahuasca and this kind of stuff, that it seems to be a very enlightening experience, and teaches you a lot of, lets you kind of look at your life a little different, then I'm not going to stop you. It's where I become a little on the anti-drug side is when it's using it as a crutch. When you're using drugs as a crutch, or you're letting them rule your life, that's when drugs no longer have a place for me, or in my opinion, for very many other people. But I don't want this to sound anti-drug. So with everything that's said in this video, to go off your meds could be a public health concern. Be very, very careful. All of these categories, all that depression, anxiety, ADHD, they're all invented. They're made up. They were made up to make sense of something. I don't think and in my perspective, I don't think it needed to be made sense of. You have a challenge, you got to conquer it. If all these things are true, then there's a lot of people in the world that have conquered these things, and that means that they are unexplainable. If they can do it, you can do it. I guarantee you. Our brains aren't growing from evolution. Our brains are actually shrinking. Our heads are shrinking, our brains are shrinking, and you have way more power over the chemicals that are going on in your brain and the chemicals that are going on in your body than you think you do. And a lot of it is just about your emotional state. And you can change that through meditation, by breathing, by just stopping, calming down. You can change it by the amount of sleep. You can change it by exercise. And I know people say catharsis. I disagree with catharsis completely. I do not understand why you would indulge in anger. Why wouldn't you express yourself freely? Yes, but to indulge in anger is just to practice the anger. That doesn't make any sense at all. But your stress hormones and these things that aren't necessarily very good for you, you have more power over these than you think. Just like you have more power over your heart rate than you think. Your heart's going to beat, but you can slow that sucker down when it starts getting up really fast, if you consciously think of it. And whatever, you get what you focus on. That's the big thing here. You get more of what you focus on. You might have a problem with depression and all of these things. Like, you might live in these categories. Okay? I've lived in all of these categories at some point in my life. At those points in my life, I was extremely focused on those things and getting better at those things. I was very focused on being more depressed, very skilled at going into anxiety, very skilled at going into anger, very skilled at going and being victimized by my learning disabilities that aren't really disabilities, but I believed that they were, and they're not. They're not disabilities. Okay, so don't give these things power. That in practice, they become as real and as powerful as you believe them to be. Take that belief, pull it out of your brain. Stop believing in that crap, because it's not real. It's something that you're just making up in your brain. So I went over time today, didn't I? Anyway, I hope this challenged some of the perspectives that anybody listening has on on these topics. And please, I would love to hear your perspectives and your experiences with these in the comments below. But thanks for being here, guys. I really appreciate it. It's so cool when you guys actually show up for these. It's pretty neat. But thank you. We will be back tomorrow. I think we have an interview tomorrow. I don't remember who with, but don't tell them that. All right. Thanks, guys. Tomorrow.